As I'm introducing this podcast, so much comes back about the interview with Sean Lavin. We talked a lot about many subjects. And just to prepare you, this is about 35 minutes long, the interview. But I really want you to stick it out because it was such a useful interview. It comes down to managers, leaders, failure leading to insight, how better hiring can affect turnover, how leaving people alone in their role can affect turnover. There's some really good stories that Sean shared. We talked about how hiring and dating are very similar. So lots of different topics. Also, stick to the end. Just as I'm asking Sean for some help with website and where people can go to if they're interested in talking with him or connecting, he shares another quote right at the end, which again just really hits the nail on the head in so many ways and speaks to the value of finding the right people, developing the right roles, and creating this really unique efficiency, synergy, culture, values in a business that makes so much sense. Enjoy the interview. Not sure what time of day we're finding you today when you're listening to this, but I'm welcoming you to this week's podcast. I'm here with Sean from Aircom, and I'm just getting to know Sean over the last couple of meetings we've had. But Sean, how about you share yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your company, and then we'll get into the interview here.
Thanks, Mark. Happy to be here. My name's Sean Lavin with Aircom Instrumentation. We are a manufacturer of instrumentation in the Edmonton area. I'm the president of this company, and I can happily say I co-own this with two business partners, and we have about 33, 34 people on staff. And we're in a people business. We deal with people in order to have our products manufactured, made, sold, etc. It all starts with communication and a people. Specifically, what's leaving the back door is temperature sensors. About 75% of our business is manufacturing these widgets, being situated here in Alberta, in the heart of natural resources. When the phone call rings, it's typically somebody in a heavy industrial process looking to solve a temperature sensor problem. We have some other products that we also complement temperature sensors with. These would be pressure transmitters, signal conditioning, some valving gauges, etc. But the heart of our business is making products. And before that can happen, we have to solve problems. And in order to solve problems, people have to talk to one another.
You are very good at segueing here, Sean. Well, maybe what I'll do is I will just ask the open-ended question. How did you get in touch with Mike? So Mike is the owner of Concord, that runs traits, that developed traits from the beginning. But yeah, how did you get to know Mike?
It was a referral from somebody within our industry that we were working with, and another business owner, and we just happened to be talking about employees and maybe some struggles and some pros and cons. And are you doing any of this profiling traits stuff? Have you heard of these tools? And we had heard of them, but we had never used them. So well, you got to contact this company. So that's what we did. We contacted that company, and the first instance, let's do your traits. Let's have a meeting together. And every time anybody ever sees their traits or is presented their traits, they're blown away. Like, whoa! I always laugh at that because I heard somebody later say, "Why are you so surprised? You just told the computer, 90 things about you, and it's just telling it back to you. And why are we so surprised?" But I think we're surprised because of what comes out of it, and the frame it comes back at you in is quite a surprise and always eye-opening insight. So that's how we met Mike, and got started on our journey of trying to figure this out and where it fits in our business.
Yeah, we've talked in our calls a little bit about failure and problems, as we all have both in our lives if we're growing at all in any way, shape, or form. But I'm going to come back to something you said. You talked about, like, why are we surprised if we give information and it shoots back to us? And that's something that I've always struggled with when it comes to psychometric assessments, is going, come on, like, I just told you this. What's the big deal? And I think what stands out to me about traits, I want your opinion on this, is that Whenever I do a traits profile on somebody, it tells them, yes, they know this about themselves, but they've never thought about it this way. Like most psychometric assessments come out and we go, yeah, we know this. This one just presents things in a slightly different way where we went, okay, it's worded in a unique way and it's probably telling me something that I do know about myself, but I haven't really uncovered fully yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the frame to your point, we know ourselves really well. That's what we know the best. And we know ourselves through these experiences, like maybe that difficult conversation with somebody, or maybe that triumph in a conversation or in a success. And the when you look at the traits, okay, there's some insights as to how we showed up in that moment when things went well or maybe not well. And if I understand myself from the experience, maybe how I felt and how I showed up in that event. And then you kind of see this matrix of maybe where I land according to the average. Geez, I wasn't that social, or man, I could have been more social there, right?
That's good. That's good. All right, let's go back to some of those mistakes or problems or why did you come? Like what were the issues you were dealing with? Again, you've got 34, 35 employees.
Yeah, we had one department specifically that we were having some high turnover in. And we were doing things today, what I'll call the old-fashioned way. We were hiring for this role, and this is it's a sales role, it's a customer service role, but it's a very technical role. There's a lot of technical conversations that have to happen. And so typically the standard was we only hire people with this education. And that was kind of the bar, must have this education, obviously must interview well and do all this, do all the standard stuff we do. And we just found leave after leave after leave. They wouldn't stay very long. And okay, so we're dealing with Concord, and we're getting some consulting on this problem we're having. And it instead of thinking, okay, can we put those skills, those technical skills, into somebody that's maybe more tuned to do this type of work? Let's focus on the type of work it is. So we broke down the types of work it is and started to look for people that maybe align with that sort of work, and remove ourselves from the education component for a minute, or just broaden yourselves to that. So can we try that out? I said, okay, let's try this out. So we went through a process, a screen to fit process with traits, where we've got the job model built, and then we go and we interview, and we run people through the model. We get the short list, and this part's always funny to me, because now we're working with Concord, we're working with Mike, and okay, here's the candidates, and I really like this one candidate, this one lady. I'm like, man, we gotta hire this lady. She's spot on. Like, the chair or the president of the local society of our instruments, the diploma's there, very, very outgoing and this and that. And Mike's like, well, of course you want to hire this person. This person is kind of built like you, Sean. And I think he gave me almost like a guarantee. He says, if you hire this person, I'm going to say they're going to be gone in a year. And here's why. And okay, leave. And well, I made the decision a naive young manager would. I hired the person that lady. I hired the person I thought it would be. And 6 months in the role, she had a very pleasant conversation with me. Sean, I'm not built for this. I'm out of here. And I'm mind blown. I think probably immediately I call Mike. Okay, I'm ready to listen now. Can we have another meeting? I'm ready to listen and apply the process. And we did. And we started to think bigger, think different. I've heard the book referenced a zillion times. I think I've heard it on your podcast. You hear it everywhere. Anybody that's in the mode of this, First Break All the Rules, Marcus Buckingham, great book. And as soon as you start to shift to thinking like that, well, the problem started to be solved. What we were trying to do is we were basically hiring engineers for customer service, to put it very high level. Let's find something down that middle. And it worked. Our tenure in that role is massive now, and the turnover completely stopped. There's
What?
other things I can say. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, where I was going this is you talked about hiring engineers in the sales position. What were you doing before? Who were you hiring for that position?
So that's kind of it. We were hiring engineers before for this sales position, and they were all spinning out of the job to go be technical engineers, to go be technical. So what kind of traits taught us, what some consulting with Concord taught us, was look for somebody who's built for having a technical conversation, a people focused conversation, but applying these technical skills. There's a model for that. And let's try to find those types of individuals. Because when the bar was only must have this education, when you look at the demographic that goes into that education, they're not going into that education for kind of a people focused role. They're going into that education to, nose to book, do some math, solve some problems type stuff, or work with hands on the gizmos and the electronics.
Okay, so I heard you wrong there, and I appreciate the correction there. And that's something that I consistently run into is companies going, for example, an engineering firm saying, hey, we need to make a promotion. We need a supervisor. We need a manager. We need somebody in a C-suite. And we're finding that people are really struggling as they move around because the original hire was correct.
Mm-hmm.
And they shouldn't be moved around now because they should
Right.
stick with their expertise there. Maybe we talk a little bit about that because that's something that we brought up in some of the conversations we've had.
Yeah, that's it. That's an interesting one too, because we use these types of tools now heavily in the business since that experience, and it has a compounding effect. So you start to find alignment. You start to find people that stay and they behave better and they perform better and they want the job and they like the job. It doesn't become work anymore, and that has like this compounding effect. It makes the culture better. It makes other things better. When you have turnover, you have people that shouldn't be there and then they end up quitting. You have to hire again, and it's horrible culture effects. But when you start, so the traits effect has this culture effect eventually too. More alignment, a better company culture, and it kind of just helps uplift everything. But it can't be a limiting factor, because if we're looking at this for like round peg, round hole type stuff, makes it tricky. It makes it tricky on the people too for moving up or moving laterally. And there's an Adam Grant quote I love. I wrote it down so I can read it here today, but this is huge. And we go as far as putting like traits profiles on the wall upstairs, kind of near the boardroom. Everybody can come have a look. We do some internal training. We have Concord in training staff all the time as well on it, building this as a part of our company culture. But as Adam Grant says, that's just the way I am is just a missed opportunity for growth. Personality is not your destiny, it's your tendency. No one is limited to a single way of thinking, feeling, or acting. Who you become is not about the traits you have, it's what you decide to do with them. And that's huge, because if people were that easy to figure out, I don't think we'd have some of the things going on in the world and politics, etc., than we do. We're complicated. We're so complicated. But tools like this, they kind of, especially on hiring and develop, they just allow us to get that much more understanding upfront and during, because it's, again, not about the traits you have. It's kind of where you're deciding to use them and how you're deciding to move them. So when somebody wants to, they say they start in a role and they want to maybe move into a different role, and I don't like saying up or down. Maybe it's more width, more amplitude, so to speak. We can sit down and we can have a real conversation of where you're going to be really successful and maybe where you might have to work a little harder or lean on some of your peers for this type of thing. So, maybe a less outgoing individual might need a little bit of a more outgoing individual kind of chairing the meeting. Same thing with assertiveness, or that, the need to control the situation type trait. Making decisions, so hey, you might find yourself making decisions more of a committee basis than a hard make a decision by myself based on my own instinct, which is better. I don't know. I guess that depends on the organization and what's needed there.
As you gave that quote, something came to mind that I want to kind of bang our heads together on. That is, sometimes when I'm dealing with a company in this, I'll run into somebody who has had a really bad experience in the past with some kind of psychometric assessment where they were then like fired, and it was based on the assessment. And I'm going, wow. Hold on a sec. First of all, that's not how any assessment should be used. You should never just look at a piece of paper, even if it is objective, and just go, you're not a fit, leave. Secondly, the purpose of this is to start the question process. So you talked about having all of those up on your wall. I
Mhm.
love that idea because now somebody can go, oh, interesting. Like I consistently see myself very similar to this person, but there are these other tweaks, and people can start noticing things about each other and noticing about themselves. So it brings self awareness. Then it aligns with what you said about culture. When people are doing what fits them, typically they come to work excited. Typically,
Yep.
they leave work happy. Typically, they're not wasting time on lunch hours or breaks or whatever to get things done. And to me, that's culture. If you've got everyone excited and everyone working well together, you've created a business that can do really well. Maybe comment on some of those thoughts.
Oh, you've reminded me of a great story too. So, okay, now we've listened to Mike. We've kind of fixed a bit of that role, and we've got some momentum there, and we have people staying cultures better. So now we on our journey into the psychometrics, into the traits, we did have one employee, and this is where we use these tools for development too. So, this individual, a little bit lower on the sociability trait, and that trait, need for interaction with others. How often, how much people interaction do I need? This individual, very technical focused. We had him doing a broad variety of work, but he always seemed a little stressed. He would even vocalize a little bit being frazzled. And I chatted with Mike about this individual, say, how do we make his experience at Aircom a bit better? And Mike, well, what's he doing? Where's he sitting? Type stuff. And what we found is we had this individual in a room with a pile of other individuals. Kind of, it's a bit of a, it's loud, it's busy, it's where we're taking a lot of phone calls. There's a lot of problem solving going on in there. He says, if you have a place, even a shared office or an office, try this out. Put this individual into a shared office and see what happens. And also too, the type of work they're getting. If we take those, if he's doing a lot of 5-minute tasks, what if you have a bunch of like 2-hour tasks? Give this individual the 2-hour tasks. Do you think you have work, you can split work out like that? I'm like, totally. He should be doing more of that anyways. Let's give this a try. So we put this person into a more quiet atmosphere, and we put this person into a longer task role, and he automatically started, you said it, like he started showing up to work early. He started expressing a lot more happiness, and you could visibly see it on him in his interviews and his reviews and just with his peers. He also, and then you get better culture out of this individual. His performance starts going up. He was happier. It was pretty neat. At the same time, the opposite of that, we have people that are quite lively, quite outgoing. Don't put them in the quiet room, because guess where they're never going to be? In the quiet room.
In their
They're going to
office.
be
In their
looking
office,
for a
yeah.
bit of that. Yeah, they're going to be looking for that in interaction, right? So there's some, to your point, there's some areas where we've now further used it in the development and the kind of the momentum of somebody on their journey through the company.
That makes so much sense to me. I've been taking, you probably see me looking down, taking notes as you're talking because you're bringing up so many interesting points. One thing that came up to me a little bit earlier was that you said something along the lines of we don't necessarily know everything about a person. We don't necessarily, we see certain things. It's all, I'll maybe give the analogy of marketing. When we produce a resume, a CV, when we have an interview, we're marketing ourselves. And we all know that marketing doesn't always completely share what's going on beneath the surface, right? There's the whole bait and switch thing. And I'm not painting people as we're trying to lie and cheat each other, but I almost think about it like a long-term relationship. You go on a
Yeah.
first few dates with somebody, and initially you see certain aspects of that person. And usually it's kind of like culture. We're noticing certain things that we like, and we're intrigued. So we're looking for things that we want to be attracted to. But long term, we start to realize, oh, there are these other aspects of this person. And I think successful long-term relationships typically are where we go, what was it a fit up front? Because if there's so much difference up front, it's really difficult to make it where it's so much more work in relationship later on to figure that out. And sometimes doesn't work out. And I think about this with jobs going, traits allows us to see kind of under the hood a little bit more objectively, saying this is what's not going to change. So the smile on this person's face, how they're dressed today, how they come across, that can change a little bit. Behavior can change depending on the situation, but personality doesn't.
Yeah. And you know what? It's the interview. It's like a date in a way. Like it's and people can act, and they're acting. They want a job. Having a job is one of the most important things we have to do. We in order to, you know, obtain money, we need to work for it, and in order to get into that environment, you need to do an interview. So everybody's going to show up at their best, and it's a funny dance in interview. You know, they're gonna lead with what they think you want. You're gonna get excited about things that you're seeing in them, and maybe you're getting excited about things that aren't related necessarily to the job, but your own core interests. So for example, like the way I see it is we measure people against what we know the best. And the thing we know the best, the truest, is ourselves. So when I see somebody who likes to chat, oh, I'm in because I'm a chatter. So now we're chatting. But if I'm interviewing a chat for an engineer and I happen to be in that interview room, and that engineer and I are really chatting, I'm going to leave and say, man, I really like that guy, you know? And, but is that the right person for the job of, you know, head down doing math as an example?
Yeah.
So there's just an example. Um, oh, another thread you're on here, which I really like, is the um, we need time with people. That, you know, you know, statute probationary period, but you really, you know, I always like to say a good year. You need a really good year to kind of, you're going to see where everything falls. They're going to have time to succeed. They're going to have time to fail. Failing is very important. You know, we fail forward, but how do you react in a negative situation, a positive situation? It'll take a good year to see that. So now let's reverse to hiring. Why aren't we using these tools everywhere to stack the odds against us and the person you're hiring the best for both parties? You don't want to bring somebody to a job they hate, and we don't want to hire somebody for a job they hate. So it's almost like the interview before the interview. The doing the traits assessment, and we always send it out ahead of an interview. We've even been so bold to say, if you want to be considered for this job, click this link and do these traits. We're not going to look at your resume otherwise. We've done that a few times too. Um, and the interview before the interview, because people will show up, they'll act, and it takes time, to your point, to kind of, that personality never changes. The act might change.
Okay, I'm going to go back to something I think I actually brought up, but it came from a thought that you had because I want your thoughts on it. And that was that some people have seen this as an abusive thing, that somebody's going to pigeonhole me and this is
Right.
all they see me as. Do you run into that in your business? Do you run into that with individuals? How do you handle that if you do?
We haven't run into it too much, but I would suggest it probably exists at some undertone because they know how kind of serious we are about traits. Everybody was hired on them, so they know that it's a serious part. Part of it also gets lost through the culture and through the, you know, just the journey of the employee. You can fast forward 5 years and the traits don't matter because the manager and the employee, they've gotten to know each other. They know their sweet spots, they know their blind spots, they know how to solve problems together. You know, they're dancing quite well together. Oh, right, those are my traits. That might come up again if we're investigating, and maybe they're having a staff issue with somebody else. Maybe they're thinking of a different position switch, and it's okay, let's put it on the table. Let's talk about where success is going to happen, where success might not happen. That Adam Grant quote I have posted on the traits wall where we have all the communicators and stuff. I have those words. I think he did it on Twitter. I just snapshotted and printed. So you can kind of, I want people to read that it's not a limiting factor. It's about what you decide to do with what the gifts you were given. You know, I call them superpowers too. They are our superpowers, but when we, you know, we've all seen the superpower movies. When we use our superpower, when we overuse it, it becomes our negatives too. Um, I've heard of businesses on their name tags putting colors or letters or caricatures of their traits. Big companies do this so they can, you know, when you're walking up against somebody, you can almost identify what sort of general bucket they're in. I've had an experience like this at Aircom where somebody was kind of a little upset that somebody wasn't saying good morning to them. And well, guess what? If we want to take traits to the table with this, you're a very much a good morning person. You almost want to hug, where this person doesn't even want eye contact. And that's not personal. That's just how they're built. That's how they see the world. That's how they've been, the gifts they've been given to see the world through. And when you kind of remove personal from it and apply maybe a little bit of, I don't know, what do you call this stuff? Like psychology to it, I guess. It oh, okay. Well, as long as it's not personal, it's not a problem.
Yeah, the way I see that, Sean, because I agree with this, and I've seen this a lot as well. If you've got somebody that's they don't want any socialization with other people. Their sweet spot is in the dark back room, right? Just put head down, do their work. That's how they do their best work. And you tie them up with somebody who's like, hey, let's get together every single evening after work. We should all be hanging out. If you put those two people in the same room, they're going to annoy each other. And what I often have done is just put their traits beside each other and say, this is the way you're wired. This is the way you're wired. Does it make sense that there's going to be miscommunication or frustration or even hurt feelings sometimes? That good morning, I think about the junior high version of that, where somebody goes, I'm mad at you because you didn't say hi to me. I'm like, I didn't even see you, right? So you go, if just a little bit of knowledge, just a little bit more insight allows people to say, oh, this is kind of the way this person's wired, and I just have to adapt a little bit of my behavior, and we can get along just fine.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And the tricky part, I think, is us all getting over ourselves, because that's we always revert back to who we are and how we're built. We all struggle to see other people's point of views, especially in tension, especially when the heat is on the rise, so to speak. Maybe our job tension, maybe there's some tension at home, maybe there's some conflict with a friend or whatever. But stuff outside the office, stuff inside the office kind of can raise and lower our tension scales, and depending on where we are there might depend on how we show up and perform with others. And that's what I always find. If you got to look at this situation, if somebody's having some conflict, or maybe they're not seeing somebody for what they think they should see them, I think the first step is check in with yourself. Like, where are you? How do you see yourself right now, and figure you out, and then try to figure them out in relationship.
I had someone wise one time say to me, Sean, if you get into a fight with somebody one day, that could be on you, it could be on them. If you get into a fight with everyone one day, that's probably on you. And I was thinking about that as you said it, because we need to be aware of what's going on. But you also mentioned this in the context of stress. If somebody has stress in their job right from the beginning because they're not in the right role, that is going to affect culture. That's going to affect everyone around them. It all goes up. When you find somebody in the right role, when you're in the right role, now when there's something odd going with that person, you can more easily identify. So I'll pull somebody out sometimes. If I've got an employee, I see they're off in a little bit, I'll pull them out to a side room and say, hey, you doing okay? What's going on back home? What's happening in life? And consistently, it's something going on somewhere else. And I love that, because I mean, not that they're hurting, but I love that it's not because of their job. I love that it's not because of their role. I love that generally speaking, this is a good place for them, and we can just help them a little bit outside of work and everything fits into place.
Yeah. The more we talk, the more traits is a culture tool for sure. Like culture, we talk about it a lot. It's like one of the most important things to business, and you can't, culture is it's hard to change. It's like steering a ship. It's slow, and it really doesn't change because it's like a collective of people you have working for you and how they behave under the umbrella and parameters of your company, the industry, all the things that kind of relate to what you're doing, put people into a mix, and there's going to be a culture that exists, and then people, like Aircom, we're going to come up with values, core values. I don't want to say this is overused, but it is. But it's important that it's overused. We all got to be talking about our values all the time, but you can't manufacture the values. The values exist because you've decided to put a pool of 33 people together solving problems and doing something. How they show up is going to affect the values of your company. So the neat things about traits being a value tool, here's an interesting story. So when we came up with our values, we used a simple exercise, lots of sticky notes. We got some people together, think of employees past and present, and think of those ones that really, really do a good job, and write down maybe a word or two as to why they do good jobs, and let's put it on the wall. So now we've got this sticky note full of walls. Now let's start to bucket similar sticky notes into some pillars, some categories. I think we came up with like 5 verticals, eventually 4. Let's step back and let's look at these 4. And is there a name or one word that can kind of summarize all these 15, 16 sticky notes in each category? And boom, there's our core values. They always existed. We just used an exercise to name them, but they were always there. The fun thing about the traits software is you can actually run a collective of your entire organization, just profile the entire company and find this curve. So when I look at our core values, when I look at the things that make Aircom unique, and then I go look at the types of people working for us, you can almost draw well, one of the things we're problem solvers, and so you can kind of look and you can see a very much this uh, slight kind of implementer curve there where we're listening, we're thinking, and we're delivering type stuff. Urgency, this company has a culture of urgency without a question. And you go look at our patients, and we're a little restless, we're a little impatient here. So it's really neat when because that those two things happen completely separately, but have a tied in relationship with one another.
Well, and that pace has such a unique role in how quickly people will answer the phone, answer the email, will
Yeah.
take responsibility and take action on something, which is the benefit of it, right? Sean, this is brilliant. I really appreciate your time here. I really appreciate your help. What I want to do, I want to respect your time, is give you a chance to give your link or anything like that. Where should we point people if they're more interested in your company or anything that you've mentioned here?
One, if you're just generally interested in Aircom, I think a really easy place to get to know us is follow us on LinkedIn. If you type Aircom instrumentation into LinkedIn, we should be your first hit, and follow our company page. From there, you can find myself, Sean Lavin. And that links over to our website too. Our website is very much a marketing vehicle, has links to our products and data sheets and pages like that. But as far as our company noise and stuff, LinkedIn is a great place to start to get to know us. People that are working with us, they're going to be using that website and the tools on our website to work with us. So no, it's been a great adventure with you today, Mark, on the podcast here, talking about this. Traits. Played a little bit of slalom with a few of the things, and then here we ended up in a bit of a culture discussion as well, right?
Which I appreciate, because this podcast really is about how do we get the most out of ourselves and other people in an organization? How do we create a great organization from that? And I think that the culture is such an important part of that. So again, I appreciate that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to include your website and the LinkedIn links on the show notes. Okay, so anyone can go to those, and then you will see them quite quickly. Anything else that you want to mention here?
We should end on a Marcus Buckingham quote. I wrote another one down in preparation for the pod today. People don't change that much. Don't waste time trying to put in what was left out. Try and draw out what was left in, because that's hard enough, right? Hard work running companies, hard work managing people, running business, and try to use strengths, overuse strengths. Don't try to build new ones.
I love that quote, and maybe I'll finish off with an analogy that it makes me think of. When somebody's eating mashed potatoes and they go, "This steak is garbage." Like, you know what?
Yeah.
If you want steak, you got to order steak. If you want potatoes, order potatoes. But if you're asking something unfair from the potatoes right now, it's not the potatoes' fault. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. No.
Good.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I'm going to use that too. I'm going to have to use that.
Well, enjoy your week. Thank you so much for your time here, Sean.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. You too.
I truly hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Really quickly, it's easy to see why Sean is a really likable guy. It's easy to see why. I mean, it'd be great to just go out for a coffee with him and hang out with him for a little while. He's the kind of guy you want to spend time with. But he has some really good insight into company culture, into efficiency, into turnover, which I hope you were able to pull from this. I thought of 2 things during this interview that I just wanted to comment on a little bit more. The first is, and this is treading on a little bit of dangerous ground, but we talked about dating a little bit. And I thought, you know what? So much of the time, I've had business partners, when you get a business partner, you're basically marrying somebody. It's not going to be the physically intimate or emotionally necessarily the same intimacy that you see in a marriage or a long-term relationship. But so much of the time when you hire somebody, you're going to be spending a ridiculous amount of time with that person. If you're really close to that person, if they're their direct report, now it's like how many hours per day, how many hours per week, how many hours per year, it might be spending more time than with your long-term intimate partner. And I just wanted to share a story from my own life. Marriage can be really difficult, as most people who have been married know. My mom and dad are a terrible fit. Now, this is tongue-in-cheek. I care a lot about my parents, and they've worked really hard on their marriage. They're actually coming up to their 50th wedding anniversary. But they have had to work so hard on their marriage to keep things going, to make it work. And they have sometimes years or periods of long-term, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, up to a decade, where they were really struggling together. And when I think about this, I go, wouldn't it be easier if we simply found a better partner right off the bat? What if we found a better partner? If we found a better partner, a better fit, would that not make everything easier later on? Because I don't think that marriage needs to be tortured. Long-term relationships need to be tortured. And working with people that you didn't necessarily choose from the beginning, although with hiring you do have a lot of choice. The existing members of your company, you don't have a lot of choice with. But wouldn't it be better if you could get along right from the beginning? If you could be a fit right from the beginning? That's so appealing to me when I think about businesses. The second thought that I had that I wanted to address is that culture is not, I'm going to repeat this a number of times because it's so important. Culture is not about creating fun. It's about having the right people involved. And this goes right in alignment with what I was talking about with marriage, that analogy. If you are enjoying the people around you, if you are all working in the same direction, if you have the same values, is it not going to be so much more enjoyable to work together? Think about a conversation you've had where maybe it was fantastic when it started, but it just got better with time. Think about people you knew where you hit it off right off the bat. You enjoyed time together, but you enjoyed that time more and more as time went on. That's the way workplace efficiency can and should be, where we click with people, where we enjoy being with people. And over time, it gets better, not worse. It gets better because we draw out each other's strengths more and more. Think about this a little bit. Let me know if you have any questions. And something that I'm going to ask you to do today is to rate this podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, if you enjoy this episode, and you have the ability to rate it, sometimes certain platforms allow that, some don't. Apple's great for this. Please rate it. Also, please reach out if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts. I'm going to make sure that my contact information is in the podcast show notes. Please reach out if you have any questions, if you have comments, if you maybe go, you know what, Mark, I would disagree with this, or have you ever thought about this? I love thinking through new ideas, and I would love to have more interviews with people who think outside of the box. Enjoy your week.